welcome everyone to another podcast in the series related to the book by Springer Nature, Intercultural Competence Through Virtual Exchange, Achieving the United Nations SDGs. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by an excellent panelist, Dr. Didem Ekici, and we're going to have a discussion on her chapter, Bridging Cultures and Closing Equity Gaps, Leveraging Collaborative Online International Learning for Achieving the SDG4 Quality Education. Dr. Ekici, a warm welcome to our podcast.
Thank you, Elena. It's great to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Would you please introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure. So I'm Didem Ekici, and like many other people, I wear different hats as well. I identify myself as an author, researcher, educator, and peace builder. And I'm a faculty member at the University of San Francisco and Peralta Community College District in the Bay Area. I also serve in the leadership team of a nonprofit peace-building organization that aims to build peace in conflict zones through online education and virtual exchange. And the chapter we're going to talk about today draws upon my experiences within this organization.
You are wearing a lot of hats indeed. Congratulations for that. And I'm pretty certain that you're excellent in all of your roles. Dr. Ekici, I would like to ask you now how you have been involved, if you could just explain for our audience in virtual exchange projects and the kind of research that followed up this virtual exchange project.
Sure. So in 2013, Elena, I got involved in a peace building organization, which was providing English language classes in different provinces of Afghanistan at that time. And the mission of this peace building organization, which focused on people to people peace building, inspired my involvement. The organization aimed to empower individuals through relationship building and adopting a grassroots approach to foster peace rather than a top-down method. And top-down method is the common way of peace building these days. So that really kind of motivated me to get involved. And in this context, language teaching became a tool for a broader and more meaningful mission, which is promoting intercultural understanding and peace building. And given the geographical limitations and safety concerns, virtual exchange proved to be an ideal solution for connecting people from the US and Afghanistan back then. And we began recruiting individual volunteers and university partners to initiate this impactful process. And this is how my virtual exchange journey started.
Dr. Ekici, in your chapter, obviously you're focusing on SDG4, which is education. And education is mentioned by many researchers as the core or one of the core of the sustainable development implementation process, despite some challenges. And you're referring to some of these challenges. So I would like you, if it's possible, to elaborate on a few of the challenges and how they relate to the specific context that you're researching.
So SDG4 is such a meaningful goal. It aims to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And you see, this is really meaningful, right? And in a perfect world, we would say, yeah, let's do it. But I don't think we live in that perfect world, at least not yet. So this goal has been criticized for being too ambitious and universal, which I agree with because we cannot implement a cookie cutter approach considering all the global power imbalances and North and South divide, right? And no, not all countries are financially or structurally ready to undertake this type of reform. Also, quality education is the goal here, but what are the quality standards? Like, what is the definition of quality education? Which I believe is totally different in the global South than the North. So without clarification on these issues, it's really hard to say SDG4 is an achievable goal. And I believe that that's the reason the progress has been so slow so far.
I agree. You have mentioned the type of quality. I think this is a very big question that we should pose for our audience and for us being
Yes.
involved in academia and teaching. So that was a very good point. Um, but how also this particular challenge, I guess, relates to the particular context you were working on, you were researching.
Yeah. So in this chapter, my focus was on Afghanistan. And as you know, Afghanistan has gone through a lot already, right? Poverty, war, an unstable political climate, and so on. And we can easily extend this list. And for a
This,
country that has been barely holding itself together, education has never been a priority. So Afghanistan stayed way behind providing quality education for its people. And on top of that, attacks on schools caused safety concerns among families to send their children to school. And most families chose to keep their children at home rather than risking their safety on the way to school. So, in such a turbulent situation, before we start talking about quality education, we should start thinking about how to make education, which is a basic human right, accessible for its
mm,
people, especially for girls. And if you look back, we see that billions of dollars were spent to build schools, develop the infrastructure, or train teachers. But look where we are now. So if brick and mortar schools are not an option anymore, bringing virtual classes to homes still can be an opportunity for them to continue their education. So virtual exchange and collaborative online international learning, which we call COIL, come into play at this point by making education accessible for many people in countries going through conflict. And for many war countries, it's also challenging to leave the country or connect with people from other countries. And virtual exchange can be a way to connect them with the rest of the world and make their stories alive. I can imagine any better way other than this, right?
this is so well explained, and I think you're making a great point about accessibility to education. So before we even start the discussion on quality issues, the first thing we need to address is accessibility. And this is something that we are striving to bring forward with the book, with this particular book, focusing on the Global South, having a representation of many authors from the Global South. 65% of our case studies refer to the Global South. And I think we cannot address this more loudly than what you just said, that quality of education and promoting lifelong learning opportunities for all should be our first and primary goal. So you have been in researching virtual exchange projects that relate to COIL, and they relate to the English language teaching. Could you please explain to our audience some of the methodology that you have employed or has been employed in these virtual exchanges?
Yes, of course. And this has been actually an ongoing project and ongoing research for a while because this project took place through different university partnerships between the years of 2013 and 2021. And within this time frame, we always wanted to learn more about participants' experiences through interviews, through reflections. And for this chapter, I adapted the qualitative approach to have a deeper understanding of the participants' experiences. Um, and I selected participants who had been deeply involved in the project for a good amount of time because it takes time to, understand what is going on. You cannot do it in a week or so.
Hmm.
So a good amount of time and also these participants had taken on a variety of roles within this time frame, like between 2013 and 2021. So it was like they were selected based on this criteria. And also, I really hoped that their diverse experiences would provide more insightful perspectives on how virtual exchange can be used for a sustainable future, especially in the context of a country that has gone through conflict for decades, right?
Mm.
Um, and during the interviews, I made my questions ready for the participants, but we were basically having informal conversations.
Mhm.
And I also should say, during the interviews, there were intense moments that required me to pause and ground myself in order to be able to continue. Because their narratives were so powerful in a way that positioned me as a researcher and as an author with the responsibility to honor their truths. So they were
Mm.
so powerful.
I loved your last main statement, honor their truth. I guess there was a kind of a trust scaffolding, a kind of a trust building process scaffolding, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
And mm, so this took obviously a predictable amount of time. This is not something that can be built automatically or be taken for granted. And I guess that the participants also had to take their time to invest on this trust building. So what kind of topics, let's say, you had to go through or let's say alleviate from the discussion? Was there kind of an agenda, or was it like a free conversation in these informal topics? Or did it start from a more structured, let's say, conversation to a more loose, informal, and colloquial?
Mhm. So for this chapter, I know that the chapter was focusing on, SDG4 targets, and I wanted to specify my questions based on SDG4 targets, which are, access to education, access to quality education, global citizenship, and appreciation of cultural diversity and gender equality. So basically, even though our interview was just like conversational, I also wanted to learn their ideas or perspective on how those targets can be achieved using virtual exchange, because they have been involved in this project for a long time, and as I mentioned, they took different roles in this project. So their perspectives are really valuable at this point to maybe make suggestions and, share their insights about how to make this more sustainable. I know we don't have that much time, so I would like to focus on a couple of things, kind of like the intersection of virtual
Mhm.
exchange areas. And one of the things, which is also my focus, research focus, is intercultural competence development through, virtual exchange. Um, One thing I learned throughout my work and research on intercultural competence is that feeling uncomfortable in the early stages of intercultural communication is so natural. And it's because of the ambiguity, lack of knowledge about the other culture, and uncertainty about acceptable behavior, right?
Mhm.
And Wes always asks us this question: what if I say something that would offend them? What if I say something wrong, etc.? And I share direct quotes in my chapter, and you will see that. But this concern is so real and so normal, because if people avoid this type of interaction because of this type of discomfort, then intercultural competence may never ever develop, right? Because you're
That's true.
always avoiding, you don't want to go out of your comfort zone. uh,
Exactly.
but if you create opportunities for regular interaction, it helps individuals move beyond their comfort zones and take their time to understand quote unquote others. right? And what makes online collaborative learning so crucial at this point is the way it offers a safe space for people to practice stepping out of their comfort zones and also fostering intercultural communication skills. So this is something I really, really appreciate about virtual exchange. Um, Another thing I would like to mention is gender equality. But like for gender equality, everything we said from access to education to quality education, it's also valid for gender equality. That's why I want to stop here and just highlight the voices of the female students who participated in this project.
That's amazing. Yes, please do.
And here's one. This cruel world has really closed its eyes on us. This is a statement shared by one of the female participants of the project. This cruel world has really closed its eyes on us. This is so powerful.
Powerful.
This statement includes like resentment. This statement includes despair, anger, and the statement has calling or maybe I should say begging for action. And I'm not going to read the entire quotation, but every word she said was so powerful that we had really intense moment during the interview and we had to pause for a while and invite everyone who's reading the chapter to stop and process the words by these participants. They are really powerful, and every word means a lot of different meanings. So I wish I had a chance to do discourse analysis as well, Elena, but I don't have time. But another quote about virtual exchange, it means virtual exchange, helped them means girls, to not to only be educated and learn the language, it helped them to get out of the depression they have. It helped them in their mental health, and it gave them the hope that everything will get better in the future.
So it provided them with hope.
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. This participant is talking about like first of all their well-being, their mental health, and their hope. So communicating with someone out of their country, talking to someone who cares them, who talks to them, who listens to them, it's hopeful. It brings hope to their hearts. And I think these quotes tell us a lot, and there's nothing I can say after these powerful voices. But again, if you look at the codes, if you look at the narratives of these participants, you will see how powerful they are and how important for us to listen to them, listen to their voices.
Thank you for sharing this. This is indeed very powerful, and I think also the emotions that you also express by sharing this with us means that it had also an impact to you as a
Mhm.
researcher. Can you describe for our audience the kind of impact that it had on you?
Oh my gosh, it was just like, you know, as an education, as a teacher, as a researcher, as a scholar, um, it really had a big impact on my, approach to research and understanding people and understanding like how Western dominant approaches are um, so dominant all over the place, right? Like it's when you hear those voices, when you hear uh, the need of them to be heard is so important. And sometimes I see that maybe consciously or unconsciously, we're sometimes ignoring these voices. But actually, these are the voices that will make a change. These are the voices we have to make time to listen to because they're the knows who knows better. They're the knows who they are the ones who can help us co-create the knowledge. And I think I think this research overall and this project overall just made me aware that, you know, balancing out the South and North and making sure their voices are being heard is the most important thing, not only in research, in practice too.
That has been a very powerful message, and I can see how it has impacted you. And I think this is going to channel also a lot of your future research, I guess, into making more voices being heard. So I guess this is also an ongoing research. So you are looking into more examples of these virtual exchanges, exchange projects.
The project is over, actually, but the the data collection, I basically went back to the participants who took role in this project and I interviewed them. So basically, I'm still in touch with many of the participants. I have really
That's
good relations.
nice.
Exactly, exactly. So that is why this was my opportunity to go back and look at their experiences from the SDG4 perspective. So the project is not going on, um, but participants are still willing to share their voices for sure.
This is amazing, and kind of brings this project a very fresh perspective about how much we take for granted in our lives, and how much opportunity there is for people to be heard through virtual exchange, through this collaborative projects, and the kind of future hope that it can bring to these people. So what do you think, how do you think the virtual exchange and global learning has influenced the way you view the possibilities of education in relation to the SDGs?
Um, I think virtual exchange holds a significant potential for reaching people in underdeveloped or war-torn countries regarding the access and quality of education in these regions. First of all, virtual exchange can connect students with teachers and resources from all around the world, which will help a lot to the countries who are experiencing lack of, I don't know, physical schools, teacher shortages, or maybe overall just concerned about the quality of education, which is the case in many conflict zones. And in many parts of the world that are going through conflict, schools are often closed or destroyed, and people generally prefer to stay in their homes because of safety concerns. And virtual exchange will also offer a chance for people facing isolation during conflict times, um, to connect with the outside world and have their voices heard, which will be empowering and maybe bring some hope to their hearts for a more peaceful world, right? Of course, infrastructure gaps will exist. I'm not denying any of those work to be done, but think about all the international fundings being made available for the work countries. Like I actually just learned recently that for the first time in 70 years, US foreign aid spending just went over $70 billion.
Mm.
$70.
That's an
So I
extravagant number.
exactly. So what I'm trying to say is like, I know it's not easy, but it shouldn't be that difficult either to provide internet access, stable electricity, or maybe some, hardware tools like computer laptops for those countries. I'm sure those infrastructures efforts can be done through some funding. That's what I'm trying to say. Mhm.
Well, this has been amazing in terms of the kind of sentiments that I believe you have evoked to all of us. You have actually provided us with a lot to think about of how much, as I said before, we take for granted, and how actually technology and virtual exchange projects can actually provide the platform for hope, for a contribution to well-being of people, for a safe space to talk, to create opportunities, and to make their voices being heard. And I think that this is a wonderful selection of research projects that you have presented in your chapter. And I have personally learned a lot from reading your chapter and from our discussion today. I would like to welcome our audience to listening to this podcast many times. I believe they're going to learn a lot. And I would like to thank you very much. Perhaps you would like to leave us with a final thought about your current and future research.
I always felt like, as a scholar, my role and ethical responsibility is to center the perspectives and voices and needs of those whose voices are not heard, as I mentioned before, or whose messages are not effectively conveyed. The narratives in this chapter are telling us a lot. And they're telling us about the global injustices, lived experiences of people who have gone through war, poverty, and people who have been abstained from many basic human rights like education, right? And as we talked before this podcast, Elena, like most of the time, global South faces the imposition of Western perspectives and ideology, which does not make sense in the local context at all. And this is true for regulation, policies, like anything that was imposed through Western dominant ideology, you can imagine. And this type of hegemony also reflects itself in research and academia. And by representing the voices of Global South, or maybe I should say co-creating knowledge with them,
Mm-hmm.
we can develop projects, policies, and regulations that have mutual benefits for both sides. And I'm really, really honored. I'm really honored to share the ownership of the knowledge being collaboratively produced in this partnership and take another step towards decolonizing research. As I mentioned before, as a researcher and as an author, I really felt responsible to honor their truths and powerful narratives, which are genuinely represented in this chapter. And I would like to thank everyone who will be reading the chapter. And yeah, they're welcome to reach out to me for further discussions. I would love to have another discussion with anyone. Yeah.
Dr. Ekici, it has been lovely talking to you. This has been an amazing, powerful discussion. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing this with us.
Thank you, Elena. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.